My son walked into my house on a Tuesday morning without knocking, didn't ring the bell, just used the key I gave him for emergencies and walked straight into my kitchen like he owned the place. I was standing at the counter with a cup of coffee in my hand when he said it. Dad, Sandra, the kids, and her mom are moving in here. Their apartment is too small. We've already figured everything out. That's it. No question. No, what do you think? Just a statement, delivered like a weather report. My name is Roy Caldwell. I'm 67 years old. I spent 35 years as an electrician, wiring houses, climbing into attics in July heat, working double shifts so I could save enough to buy my own place. This house on Delwood Avenue, I bought it with my own money 22 years ago, before I ever met Linda. Before any of this. It's mine. My name is the only one on the deed. Neil is my son from my first marriage. He's 38 now, works as a freelance delivery driver, income up and down every month. His wife, Sandra, works checkout at a grocery store. They've got 2 kids, Tommy, who's 8, and Lily, who's 6. Good kids, none of this is on them. And Sandra's mother, Irene, is 72, recently widowed, has trouble getting around on her own. I heard all of that. I understood all of it. What I said was, when Neil relaxed his shoulders, Saturday, Sandra already has most of it packed. He left 20 minutes later, satisfied. Probably called Sandra from the car to say Grandpa was on board. He had no idea what was coming. And honestly, neither did I, not yet. The real punch hadn't landed. That came 3 days later. I had been looking for an old insurance document on the laptop Linda and I share in the living room. We've had it sitting on the side table for years. Both of us use it for different things. No passwords between us. I opened the browser to check email and noticed a folder in the downloads I hadn't seen before. I clicked it without thinking much. Inside was a chain of emails between Linda and a lawyer named Patricia Osgood going back 6 weeks. I sat down and read every single one. Linda had asked this lawyer whether a house purchased before marriage could be considered marital property after 16 years of living in it together, whether shared expenses over that time, utilities, groceries, repairs, built any kind of legal claim, whether having additional family members establish residency could strengthen that claim over time. Patricia Osgood had written back, "It depends on the state, but there are arguments to be made. The longer the shared occupancy and financial contribution, the stronger the position." I closed the laptop. I didn't move for a while. I just sat there in that living room I'd been sitting in for 22 years, looking at the carpet, the lamp, the framed photo of Neil at his high school graduation on the shelf. I've been in some hard situations in my life. Lost my first marriage. Lost 2 colleagues on a job site in 1998 that I still think about. Had a cancer scare at 59 that turned out to be nothing. I know what a gut punch feels like, and I know the difference between one that knocks you down and one that just makes everything go quiet. This was the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't hurt right away, because your brain is still working through what it means. Here's what it meant. My wife of 16 years had been quietly consulting a lawyer about how to build a legal claim to property I bought before I ever knew her name. And the plan to move Neil and his whole family in, that wasn't Neil's idea. Neil doesn't think in terms of property law. Neil thinks in terms of what's convenient and what his wife tells him makes sense. This was Linda's plan. Neil was the delivery mechanism. I sat there and thought about who I had believed Linda to be. I thought about 16 years of mornings and dinners and vacations and the way she laughed at her own jokes before she even finished telling them. I thought about how much of that was real and how much of it I'd been filling in myself, the way you do when you want something to be true. I didn't know the answer to that. I'm still not sure I do. What I did know was this. I was not going to get loud. I was not going to sit her down that night and confront her with the emails and turn the whole house into a courtroom while she denied and explained and apologized until nothing was clear anymore. I've seen that play out. It doesn't work. People say whatever they need to say to survive the conversation. And then the next day, everyone is still in the same position they were before, except now there's damage on top of it. I was going to be smarter than that. I went to the garage and stood at my workbench for a while, just holding a wrench I wasn't using, staring at the pegboard. Then I went back inside, poured myself another cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table while Linda made dinner in the next room, humming along to something on the radio. I said, "Smells good." When she asked if I was hungry, she smiled and said it would be ready in 20 minutes. I nodded and drank my coffee and started thinking about who to call in the morning. The next morning, I called Phil Doran. Phil is 65, retired plumber, my oldest friend going back to when we were both working the same neighborhoods in our 30s. We used to grab lunch at the same diner on Route 9 when our schedules crossed, and somewhere in there a friendship grew out of habit and then stuck around long after the habit did. He went through a divorce 8 years ago that cost him half of everything he'd built over 30 years. He came out the other side quieter and sharper, the way some men do when something expensive teaches them to pay attention. I told him I needed to meet. He didn't ask why. He just said he'd be at the diner at 9. I showed him the emails on my phone. He read them the way he reads everything. Slowly, no expression. Going back to reread a sentence when something didn't sit right. When he was done, he set the phone on the table and looked out the window at the parking lot for a moment. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Since last night. You say anything to her?" "No." He nodded like that was the right answer. "Good. Not yet." He picked up his coffee. "You need to call Ted Flanagan today. Before you do anything else, Ted Flanagan is a real estate attorney out of the county seat." Phil had used him during the divorce when the question of his rental property came up. Phil said Ted was the kind of lawyer who didn't waste your time or his, which is the only kind worth paying for. I called Ted from my truck in the diner parking lot while Phil waited inside and finished his eggs. Ted picked up on the second ring. I gave him the short version. "Bought the house before the marriage, my name only on the deed. 16 years of marriage since then, wife had consulted another attorney about marital property claims. Son was being used to move a family of 5 into the property that coming Saturday." Ted's first question was, "Do you still have the original purchase documents?" "Everything in a lockbox in my garage. Don't move them. Don't mention this call to anyone in the house. Can you come in Thursday morning?" I said yes and hung up. When I went back inside, Phil was on his second cup of coffee and had ordered me a refill without asking. That's the kind of friend he is. I sat down and told him I had an appointment Thursday. "Good," he said. "Between now and then, act normal." "I know. I mean it, Roy. Normal. You eat dinner, you watch the game, you say good morning. Nothing changes on the surface." I told him I understood, and I did. I'd spent 35 years on job sites where the rule was simple. Don't touch anything until you know what it's connected to. This was the same principle applied to a different kind of wiring. What I didn't tell Phil, because I hadn't fully worked it out myself yet, was how strange it felt to sit across the dinner table from Linda that week and carry what I knew. She was the same as always, making plans, talking about where Irene would sleep, mentioning that Neil had found a secondhand dresser for the kids' room. She talked about it like a project she was managing, which I suppose was exactly what it was. I watched her and tried to find the version of her I thought I'd known, not in an angry way. More like when you've been looking at something for so long that you stop really seeing it, and then one day the light shifts and you notice details you'd missed. I wasn't sure what I was looking at anymore. I just knew I needed to understand it clearly before I said a word. Thursday came. I told Linda I had an errand to run and would be back by noon. She was on the phone with Sandra and waved me off without looking up. Ted Flanagan's office was on the second floor of a building downtown shared with 2 other practices. He was maybe 54, compact, the kind of man who measures every word before he uses it. He had already pulled the county property records before I sat down. My name, sole owner, purchase date, March 14th, 2003. Linda and I didn't get married until June of 2008. Separate property, Ted said. Clear as it gets in this state. Her name was never added to the deed. There's no commingling of title. The emails she sent that other attorney don't create a case, they just show she was looking for one. He set the print out on the desk and folded his hands. But here's what matters practically. If you voluntarily allow her family members to establish residency in that property, you open the door to complications that didn't exist before. Occupancy patterns matter. Don't let Saturday happen. He drafted a 1-page legal notice while I sat there. Not aggressive language, just factual. A formal statement of ownership confirming the property at Delwood Avenue was purchased prior to the marriage and remains sole separate property under state law. If anyone tried to challenge it, they'd be spending money fighting something the county records had already settled in 2003. I signed it. Ted kept a copy. I drove home, went straight to the garage, and put my copy in the lockbox with the original deed. That night, Linda asked if I was still comfortable with Saturday's plan. She used that word comfortable like it was a question about the temperature in the room. I told her Saturday was fine. She smiled and went back to her book. I went to the garage and called Phil. Told him what Ted had said. He listened without interrupting. "You need me there Saturday?" he asked when I was done. "Yeah," I said. "I do. I'll be there." That was the whole conversation. Some things don't need more words than that. Friday night, Phil came over. I had the garage door halfway up the way I usually do when the weather is decent. The old country station playing low on the radio. 2 chairs pulled out from the corner where I keep them for exactly this kind of evening. We had a couple of beers and didn't talk about much at first. That's one of the things I've always appreciated about Phil. He doesn't fill silence just to fill it. After a while, he asked, "You sleep this week?" "Enough." Linda's still acting like nothing's different. "Yeah." She's been on the phone with Sandra every day, talking about where to put Irene's furniture, which bathroom the kids will use. Real detailed stuff. Phil looked at his bottle. She really thought this was going to work. She did. That's the part that gets me, he said, not the plan itself. It's that she never figured you'd push back. He was right, and I'd been thinking about that all week. Linda had been with me for 16 years. She knew I was quiet, that I didn't like conflict, that I'd rather let something go than drag it into an argument. She'd watched me do that with Neil, with my brother Gene, with neighbors, with situations at work. She'd concluded reasonably enough based on the evidence that I was a man who absorbed things and moved on. What she hadn't understood was the difference between things I let go because they didn't matter and things I hadn't yet decided to fight for. She'd mistaken patience for surrender. That was her real mistake, bigger than the emails, bigger than the plan itself. I told Phil that. He thought about it for a moment. You think the marriage survives this? I don't know. I said, I'm not going to blow it up over it. But it's not going to be the same either. He nodded and didn't push further. That's the right response to something like that, and he knew it. Saturday morning came in clear and cold. I was up at 6, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table while the house was still quiet. Linda came down around 7:30, already dressed, already organized. She made herself tea and started going over a list she'd written on a notepad, room assignments, which boxes would go where, who was bringing what. I watched her and drank my coffee. At 8:45, I sent Phil a message. Almost time. He replied, already parked on the street. By 9, the moving truck was pulling up. Neil's car came in right behind it, Sandra's car behind that, and a third car I recognized as belonging to Linda's sister Carol, who apparently had been recruited to help unpack. Nobody had mentioned Carol to me. That detail told me everything I needed to know about how thoroughly this had been planned without my input. Neil got out of his car looking tired but focused the way he gets when he's committed to something. He waved at me standing in the doorway and called out that they'd start with the big furniture first. I walked down the porch steps to the driveway. Neil, hold on a minute, he stopped. The two movers who had climbed out of the truck stood waiting. Sandra was getting Lily out of the car. Tommy had already started running toward the front door and stopped when he heard my voice. Linda came out onto the porch behind me. Ted Flanagan stepped out from beside Phil's truck, which was parked at the curb. Suit, leather folder under one arm, looking exactly like what he was. Neil looked at him, looked at me. Dad, who is that? My attorney. The word landed and everything went quiet for a second. Not dramatic movie quiet. Just the kind of quiet that happens when people realize a situation is different from what they prepared for. I kept my voice level. Neil, this house was purchased in March of 2003. My name only, before my marriage to Linda. It is my sole separate property under state law, Mr. Flanagan has the documentation confirming all of that, including the original deed and a formal legal notice prepared this week. Neil looked at Ted, then back at me. Dad, what is this? Linda's voice came from the porch behind me. Roy, just my name, quiet, like she already knew what was coming and was asking me not to do it. I found the emails, Linda. I didn't say it loudly. I didn't say it to embarrass her. I said it because it was the fact that explained everything else, and Neil deserved to have the facts. She didn't say anything after that. Neil looked at her. What emails? She was quiet. I took my phone out and opened the email thread. I walked over and held it out to Neil. He looked at me for a second, then took it and started reading. The mover stood by the truck, not sure what to do. Tommy had drifted back to Sandra and was standing next to her holding her hand. Lily was watching from the car window. Neil read the whole thing. I watched his face while he did. He's good at keeping his expression flat, always has been. But I've known him since he was born and I can read the small things. The slight tightening around the eyes when he got to the part about residency strengthening a legal claim, the stillness that came over him when he reached the end and understood what he was looking at. He handed the phone back to me without a word. Then he turned to Linda. You told me this was my idea, he said. She started to say something. He shook his head once, slowly, and she stopped. He turned back to the movers. Give us a few minutes. The older of the two nodded, and both of them stepped back to lean against the truck. They'd seen family situations before, you could tell. Neil looked at me. What do you need us to do? Take the truck back, I said. The house isn't available. He nodded. No argument, no scene. He walked to Sandra and said something to her quietly. She looked over at Linda on the porch, then looked down at Lily, then started putting Lily back in the car. Carol got back in her car without speaking to anyone. Linda came down off the porch slowly. She looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen from her before, not anger exactly, more like the look of someone who has just understood that the ground they were standing on was never as solid as they thought. We need to talk, she said. We will. I said, but not right now. Ted handled the paperwork with Linda that same afternoon. There was no courthouse involved, no judge, no drawn-out process. Just a kitchen table, 2 copies of a 1-page document, and a notary Ted had brought with him. The document stated plainly that the property at Delwood Avenue was purchased prior to the marriage and remained the sole separate property of Roy Caldwell. Linda read it twice, then she signed it. She didn't fight it. I think part of her had known the case was thin from the beginning. Patricia Osgood had told her as much in those emails if you read them carefully. She'd been hoping the situation would develop in a direction that created something arguable. It hadn't. Ted had closed that door before it opened. After Ted left, Linda and I sat in the kitchen for a long time without talking. The house felt different with just the two of us in it. Quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that has weight to it. She spoke first. "I didn't think you'd find out." "I know. I thought if it just happened, if everyone was already here and settled, you'd adjust to it." I looked at her. "You've known me 16 years? Did that actually seem likely to you?" She didn't answer right away. "I thought you'd let it go. Like you let most things go. Most things aren't my house." That sat between us for a minute. "I'm not asking you to leave," I said. "I'm not blowing this up, but I need you to understand something clearly. This house is mine, it was mine before you, and the paperwork you signed today confirms that it stays mine. That is not going to be a conversation we have again." She nodded, her eyes were tired. "And the next time you have a problem that involves my property or my family," I said, "you come to me first. Not a lawyer, me." She said she understood. I believe she meant it, at least in that moment. Whether it held over time was something we'd have to find out together. That's the reality of 16 years. You don't throw it away over one bad decision, but you don't pretend the decision didn't happen either. You recalibrate. You set the terms clearly, and then you see what the other person does with them. We managed. It took a few months before things felt something close to normal again, and even then it was a different kind of normal, more honest in some ways, less comfortable in others. I can live with that trade. Neil found a larger apartment about 40 minutes north. He and Sandra signed the lease themselves at the end of October, figured out the deposit, handled the moving company. He called me when it was done, not to report in, just to let me know I could hear something different in his voice, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. He called again about a month later on a Sunday afternoon. I was in the garage working on an old lamp I'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Tommy had asked about it last summer, and I'd promised him we'd fix it together someday. So I was getting a head start on the wiring before the holidays. "I want to say I'm sorry," Neil said. "You don't owe me an apology. You didn't know." That's the part I keep thinking about. I didn't know because I didn't ask. I just went along with what I was told and showed up at your door like it was already settled. I let that sit for a second. "Yeah, that's right. I should have called you first, before any of it." "Yes, you should have." He was quiet for a moment. "She told me you'd be happy to have company around, that you were lonely out there by yourself." "I've got Phil. I've got the walking group on Thursday mornings. I've got projects in the garage. I'm not lonely. I know that now." "Neil, listen. You're 38 years old. You've got 2 kids and a wife and rent to pay and decisions to make every week. I'm not going to tell you how to run your life, but I will tell you this. Stop letting other people think for you and then send you to knock on doors. That's not how a man operates." He took that without arguing. That was new, and it meant more to me than the apology did. The kids came over in November just for an afternoon. Tommy wanted to see the lamp we'd been talking about. We spent 2 hours on it together in the garage, him handing me tools, asking questions about every connection. Lily sat on the old wooden stool by the workbench and ate Graham crackers and watched us like we were putting on a show. When we turned the lamp on and it worked, Tommy looked up at me with this expression like we'd done something serious and important. We had in a small way. That's what I want to protect. Not the square footage or the property value or whatever number the county assessor has on file. I want Saturday afternoons in that garage. I want my grandkids coming through a door I chose and paid for. I want to hand down something I actually built. Nobody decides what happens inside these walls except me. That's not stubbornness. It's just the truth. If you're reading this and something about it sounds familiar, then you already know what I'm talking about. You've worked too long and given too much to let someone else make the decisions about what you built. You don't have to get loud about it. You don't have to blow anything up. You just have to know what you're standing on, make sure the paperwork says what it should say, and be willing to hold the line when Saturday morning comes and the truck pulls up. Documentation beats noise every time. Remember that.